Hey, future Black and Latinx leaders. You are listening to the Keys to the Office podcast, where we interview amazing professionals who share their individual career paths to set you up for success. We're giving you the keys to the office, and all you need to do is show up ready to unlock the door. Let's jump into today's episode.
Good morning, good afternoon, good evening, Keys family. Per usual, we're in for a treat, but today is extra special because this woman is in my head, my counterpart, my colleague, my peer, someone, just a thought leader, committed to doing the work in this space. A financial professional, but I'm excited because she's kind of me across the water. So we've crossed the borders here today, and y'all are in for a treat. We have Mosope Adeyemi, global finance professional, career strategist, author. Did I say award-winning investment professional? How dare I leave that out? And she's spoken at or coached at, well over 100 conferences and webinars. I'm excited because I have her book, and if you stick around, I'll talk to you about how you can get one. But my goodness, family, join me in welcoming Mosope Adeyemi to the podcast.
Hey, so glad to be here. Hey, Keys family.
Yes.
I like it.
Yes.
I like the community brand. I'm loving it.
I'm excited. When I got my hands on the book after we spoke the last time, I was like, wow, she is doing big things, and she has put a lot into this, how to, step-by-step guide, right? For so many. Talk to me. Okay, first, before I even jump into that, you see how excited I am, right?
Coming in hot. So I was like, okay.
Coming in hot. Tell us who you are and what you do.
No, oh my God. Christina, thank you for having me. So excited. And I'm so excited to actually see copies of the book on the other side of the world. It's amazing. You do something really small and you don't even know that it's going to get to travel before you do. Yeah. And yes, I'm super humbled and excited at the same time. But hey guys, super excited to be here. I guess a little bit about me. 3 words that would describe me would be that I am passionate, purposeful, and people-oriented. And I get to do this across a number of spheres. So I'm a finance professional. That's my 9 to 9 kind of job. So I work in investment banking. I have done for the last 15, going on 16 years now. But alongside that, I've always kind of walked this tightrope of, business, but also social pursuits. I'm just a very philanthropic person by nature. And so I just try to give myself to different things that I love and kind of seeing advancement in different spaces where I know that I can add value. So whether that is in the charity space or in career development or diversity and inclusion, whatever it is, I always feel like I find myself there. But I think my major sort of stomping ground is definitely in the area of equitable career development. And I use equitable, very intentionally. So with me being as a Black woman in a largely male, white dominated industry, I found that was just such a space that I could really lend my voice to. And as I was growing in my career, I really wanted to make sure that those who were coming along the pathway kind of didn't struggle as much as maybe I did in my career when I started. And so I've always kind of been quite active in the space of, just basically lifting as I was climbing and always looking back and thinking, okay, what, I've learned something. Okay, how do I spread that message? So I always used to do a lot of things around, learning and development, training, building new talent programs, recruitment, and the like. And about, call it maybe 4 years ago, all of those efforts then became my social first company called viSHEbility Limited. And we are on a mission and mandate to improve the outcomes for Black women in the marketplace through inspiration, coaching, and community. So yeah, I'll kind of say we're 4 years old as a company, but it's pretty much my life's work. it just sort of has a name now. So I can attract the right type of sponsorship and the like to it. And so, 4 years on, it's completely morphed into so many different things.
Yeah.
So like we kind of share stories of women in the marketplace and what they're doing. But also I think the arm of it that has grown so much is sort of this sort of more coaching career strategy piece. And so that's where I get to, talk to a lot of, whether it's teaching, talking, workshops, training, whatever format that looks like, but really helping, professionals help them make work for them. Because I think that I think that too many people check out of work a little bit too early.
Yeah.
And in particular, as we think about sort of the Gen Z, this generation Z, right? It's everything is like fast. If it doesn't work, we're out. If it doesn't work, we're out. And I just, I'm kind of this sort of weird, like, older Gen Z, very, very, very young millennial. And I really just appreciate how enabling of an environment the workplace can be. But, you have to be able to see through it. And you also have to be able to be in a place that kind of works for you, a place that's leveraging your strengths, where you can really contribute value. And I think when you're in that space, you're you go to work with joy. It doesn't mean it's not going to be stressful, but you go to work enjoying what you do. And that's sort of the space that I find myself in, and really what I encourage people to try to kind of replicate for themselves and kind of live out. So I'm a huge advocate for career joy. And figuring out the steps for you to get there. So that's a little bit about me and what I do. I'm Nigerian. I didn't say that.
Nope, you didn't.
But I have lived in the UK probably now 20 years, maybe. So the UK is very much home. But so is Nigeria. So I kind of shuttle back and forth between the two countries. My family here, and I kind of live here as well. So so that's me in a nutshell.
Girl, in that nutshell, you shared so much. Like I was literally writing like, okay, I want us to dig deeper into this and dig deeper into this because there's so much here. Like it sounds really corny, like on the front end, but like there's this sisterhood, this unspoken sisterhood between us and between women in financial services, Black women in financial services, because there have been so few of us for so long in positions of influence, right? With seats at the table. So to have this conversation with you today just means the absolute world to me. It's one of the reasons I started this podcast. So thank you. Thank you for carving out the time, because I know it's after normal business hours there. I'm sure it's been a long day. So thank you. I appreciate that. And I want to jump in because you mentioned being from Nigeria, now in the UK. I'm going to ask you what has come up in a lot of my conversations with folks from Nigeria, because you're probably going to pick maybe the fourth podcast guest from Nigeria.
We are everywhere.
And I want to hear your perspective. So what did you want to be when you grew up versus maybe what were you encouraged to pursue as you were growing up?
It's interesting. I don't actually think I had one of those. I don't think I had those, like, this is what I want to be.
Yeah.
I was just very aware of the things that I probably did well. I didn't really know what that was going to look like as a career. But I think I just was I was aware. And my parents were like one of these like helicopter parents that kind of were like every little thing. They were like, oh my God, she did this. She's amazing. I was just always like this, really being celebrated for just like little things that, come naturally to you. And then they're like, oh my God, that's crazy. That's, and I know for like very quickly things around like maths and money. I leaned into that like big time, and it was just so natural. And my dad used to always just be like, okay, this might be like a thing. I, in many ways, maybe wish like I had explored maybe other stuff or be encouraged to like explore other things like intentionally, but also those were not things that I necessarily liked. So it's a little bit of it's a mixed bag. I think you can only look at it in hindsight. Moment, I think like I went to a good school. I, studied things in the sciences and the arts, and in sort of in the business world, I chose for myself to kind of, focus quite early on, the economics and the commerce and accounting and that type of work and maths. And I didn't quite enjoy biology and chemistry and those things. I wasn't forced to do it, but I wasn't also encouraged to do it. I was just kind of left alone to my own devices.
Oh, wow.
So I think that I kind of served me well. And effectively, my education was really around what I liked doing.
I love it.
And so it meant like school for me was like, not easy, because school is never easy. Nothing's ever easy, but I was kind of in my generally in my comfort zone. I always felt like I could learn, and I always felt like I would always pass the exam. I never had any thoughts that, it wouldn't go well. I knew like I could do this. So I felt like I found that quite early. And then, as you might have heard from your other guests, growing up in the 90s, you are, especially in Nigeria, you're either like an engineer, a lawyer, a doctor, an accountant, like it's pretty much that.
Pretty much.
Oh yeah. And once you're doing numbers, it effectively, and you like money, it's kind of like, okay, maybe it's the accounting kind of field or, but one thing I remember was my dad being very, very adamant that he wanted me to have a profession and not just a job. Big distinction. I remember him kind of saying, and for him, accounting was a profession and business was like not really a thing. So he was just like, wow, I want you to like have a profession, something like you are part of a community of people who have like studied and have these like letters, after your name and all that. Cause it was very, very big on the whole profession thing. Kind of went down the accounting route, but as much as he encouraged it, I also enjoyed it. So I was not really funneled into a path. I think I just found my way through it and kind of liked it. And then so I studied accounting and finance in school, and I started accounting and finance in school. But quickly, I think that was when things now started changing. I started realizing like there were other skills that I had that I didn't feel were going to be utilized doing accounting. In particular, like I'm such a people person who I couldn't see myself like trying to figure out how to balance the balance sheet. And I just could. And at that time, I don't think I even had a very full idea of all the things that accountants do. In hindsight, now I know better. But at the time, I just thought I'm not going to sit in a back room with like paperwork and like, be balancing the trial balance. I couldn't see myself do that. So I just knew like maybe through university that I wanted to be in a place where I use numbers and I worked with numbers, but I use numbers to help other people like to make decisions. Like, so that human interaction was there. And so that kind of is what encouraged me down the pathway of banking, because in effect, it was kind of bad. And so I'm able to still use that skill. I still qualified as an accountant just because my dad was always very like on me. So I still did kind of, satisfy him, but also kind of appease myself, I guess, in some way. But then that's kind of how I forayed into banking. But I guess the other thing that I always maybe on the sidelines always felt like I could do really well was teach.
Okay.
I knew like it was just a skill. I always found myself like helping other people. I found my, and apparently the story goes that when I was in school, and this is like really young, when I was in like primary school, that I would, finish like my classwork and then I would go and start helping everyone like around the class.
Wow.
And then there are times when the teacher was teaching and I would literally say, that's not how you do it. So
stop, I can't, Mary.
Like they used to be like, I used to have so much sass about it that they would like give me the chalk and like ask me to come and like teach the class. Just crazy.
Yes.
That tells the story all the time of how she had been called into school, not once, not twice, about how I was taking over the class and I wasn't letting people. So I actually skipped a few classes consequently. Like they kind of just felt, okay, well, if you're over the class and you're, you can just move ahead. And in Nigeria, that wasn't uncommon. They felt like you were like, acting well above the class, they would just move you on. If you skip a class, and so I skipped a few of those, such that by the time I was about to go into high school, I was only about 8 years old. So I started like high school at 8, graduated from high school at 14, and I started university at 16. So it was a very, very strange like pathway, but I think it's one of those things where like, the environment kind of helped me do that. But yes, I always felt like I could teach, but I always thought to myself, teachers don't make a lot of money, so maybe not. It's just the process of elimination. And but here I am doing my banking thing and still teaching, but just kind of finding ways to combine the two. So it's actually quite interesting how life turns around.
I love this story, right? Like I'm sitting here and I'm like, okay, she knew she wanted to do the math thing, right? Math was like, obviously the path she was going to pursue. And then she was like, I want to teach. And she's like, well, there's really no money in teaching. And she's like, there's this thought process, right? And you mentioned something too about not wanting what you thought the typical accounting path looked like, right? Mm-hmm. So being intentional about being open to what other paths could potentially exist. Mm-hmm. Because yes, I talk to a lot of people when I think of accounting, and when they think of accounting, it's strictly numbers, it's strictly balance sheets. And when they think of financial services, oftentimes, unfortunately, it's strictly white male dominated, greasy sales, right? Mm-hmm. We know there are other options within both fields now. And I think part of our job, part of our duty is to share that with our communities, right? And talk to them about saying, you love math. You could do this. You could do this. You could do this. You could pave the way. And like there's so many. You love teaching. Teach someone math, right? Teach someone. Become a professor, right? There's so many different routes to take once you've identified what it is that fuels you, and you knew from an early age what that was. And sounds like you had the support from your family to pursue that path. I love it.
Yeah, exactly. So it's probably one of the best like pathways in terms of upbringing. Mm-hmm. Just really served me well. Was just very early on being kind of allowed to make my own decisions, but with guidance, but kind of what do you want? What do you like? What do you, I kind of go down that way. My brother like went down the engineering pathway. Like it was just very like no one was following anyone. Mm-hmm. And both my parents are public sector workers. My mother is a nurse. My dad, worked with the government for a really long time, and then eventually started coaching professional, interestingly enough.
Really?
Yeah. So I think I get that bone from him, very much so. But he worked with the government for the longest time, had a very, very thriving public sector career. And then when he retired, he was just like, yeah, let me do this. But he's exactly like me in that he was always about career development. How can you be better? How can I help you be better? He was always doing that, even at work. And then he started doing it like full time. Yeah. When he was from his formal career.
I love it. Let me ask you this, right? I think your dad would have served as a mentor in that coaching space. Did you have other mentors, right? How did you, let me rephrase, not how did you, but did you see yourself in others in leadership as you moved through the industry, as you moved through the financial services and the banking space? Did someone take you under their wing and provide that guidance and support, either by mentorship or sponsorship?
Yeah. Yes. But it looked very different for me, I would say. I had, again, like my parents would always help me leverage their network in terms of like people like, uncles, as we call them, uncles in quotes.
Mm-hmm. Oh, yeah.
Aunties who were professional people. My mom always was like, give her advice. She's going into this space, or she's looking at things in this field. And so I kind of always had like a basket of people homegrown. But, these are people who probably had careers in Nigeria, very different from building a career here. And so there's a need to have mentors and guidance like across the board and kind of helping you solve different problems. I had people who could like give me advice from an industry perspective and career path perspective. But what I lacked was like really around how can I, transition well in an environment where I was now seen as a minority, because that was something I had never really been until I moved into the UK. And like really come to terms with, first of all, the idea of even being a minority and what that could mean. But then, then try and kind of find my own pathway through. And it wasn't always the easiest because it's just not, you're trying to build relationships with people, but there's no point of affinity. That was always my challenge. It was like, what do we even talk about? What do we like? I don't watch football and they do. Don't go to the same clubs, pubs or whatever. They don't go to church. I do. Like there was just no point of reference. I think I always just really struggled with getting that advice. In the earlier days, I definitely benefited from formal like mentorship programs that were set up by organizations. So I always say like, sometimes take those programs, right? Go through those programs. You may not have anything, but it is something that's created to almost bridge the gap between getting your own mentors through affinity, but it's a great sort of level playing field. And so I had some great mentors through that process. In particular, I remember a guy called Brian, who was just so helpful when I was trying to get promoted, my first like layer up the rung from analyst to associate. He was so intentional about like, how do you sell yourself? How do you write your performance review? How do you document like the work you've done in the year? Like I'll write performance reviews around like, helped team do X, but it was like, what does that mean? And he was like, what is it in dollars? What is it in time? What is it in efficiency savings? Like he was very, very specific and got me into thinking about things numerically and not just, qualitatively. So he was like a really great guide. But I think probably the mentor for me that stood out, and it was quite a tumultuous relationship, I would say, at the start, but he's probably like one of the most influential people in my career, and we still keep in touch today. He was actually my manager. But for the first time, I had a Nigerian manager. I was probably about 4 years into my career, and he joined. And that was actually quite difficult because I was already used to being like the only. And I'd tried to figure out how to operate, and then he came through. And so initially it was a bit of like, how do we figure this out? It's a little bit difficult. When someone can finally pronounce my surname correctly, I was like, this is a bit weird. But eventually what I realized, like for the first time, he was able to help me disseminate and decipher feedback in a way that I would get it. So I was always being told certain things, but I just didn't understand. It wasn't practical. And I think he was the one that really helped me, like, this is what they mean. Like, let's break it down. And obviously we had affinity. He had a brother who lived close to my parents' house. They were just things we had in common. And so our conversations just became a lot more open, even though there was still that like manager, sort of relationship, but I could tell the difference immediately. And so that's where like, I talk about the importance of, culturally relevant mentors. Can never be underestimated. Like there's just something about seeing someone who looks like you or is from where you are, and being able to reach out to them or even have them reach out to you. There's just something just phenomenal about that. And he, for the first time, was probably the one person who gave me so much responsibility that I actually thought he was trying to make me, like he was trying to break me. But effectively, like in hindsight, it was just trust. He was the first person that I knew really made that switch from giving guidance to creating opportunities. And that's the difference, I think, between mentorship and sponsorship. He wasn't just telling me like, oh, hey, do this, do that. He was actively creating opportunities. So he would go into meetings and suddenly he would come out and I'll have a new project. And, no one else did that for me. So those were just opportunities that, he created or fought for when I wasn't on the table. I wasn't in the room, but he would go in, fight for opportunities for me, come out and I would do stuff. And it wasn't in a way where it was like favoritism. I think it was actually like leveling the playing field. He was taking away like the inequities that had existed, before he joined, and kind of saying, actually, hold on a minute, she's just as good. Why is she not doing it? Why is it always going to this person? Hey, okay, that's enough. Let's pull that back and let's split this and let's make sure everything is doing well. And that was probably like the platform on which I really started demonstrating my capabilities in the workplace. So he was like a big one, Ade, and I write about him in the book actually. And he's just super influential. He's just always very influential in my career. And even though we don't work together anymore, we've all kind of moved on to other companies and other pursuits, we still catch up. And he's just still like someone that, like I would always have great things to say about him. And then I guess as I got more senior, I would definitely say like there was a lady, like white, American, beautiful soul, and we just bonded. I have no idea. We just bonded on just femininity. Christian, we bonded on faith. We bonded on weird things, like things that people wouldn't typically bring to the office. That's kind of what we bonded on. I actually remember one day, like something quite terrible happened to a friend of hers. Like they lost a child just shortly after, like, and she called me into a room and just said, can you pray with me? Like these are things that don't happen like in the workplace typically. But we bonded over that type of stuff. And again, she was someone that I realized gave me so much responsibility, quite quickly. So again, would give me advice, but would give me opportunities. And so those are people like I remember were really attached to very, very specific intentional moments of growth for me, just because they just saw in me the potential to do something bigger than the seat that I was in. And they were willing to stake their, reputation or whatever. And hey, she's going to do it. She's going to handle this fine. You're in good hands. So even though I didn't feel like I was necessarily capable hands, they were even just like their own, their marker, that stamp of of confidence was so meaningful and so game changing for me. Yeah. So there have been a few people like that in and across, dotted around, and I think my advice there around sort of finding mentors is like mentors can look and sound very different. They don't have to always look like you. If they do, great, and you're able to get something out of them, fantastic. If they don't, that's okay too. The fact is, like, as human beings, like we're more alike than we think, actually. And so the moment you can give space for people to contribute to your life, and be open to receiving that, then, the more sort of places you can connect. And I think, I fundamentally believe in humanity, and that people are constantly like probably more looking for how to help rather than how to hurt.
Yeah. People are constantly looking for more ways on how to help, not hurt.
Yeah.
I love it. And I was sitting here thinking about my own story and my own mentors and sponsors. And I mentioned her in a previous episode, one of my managers in financial services who saw something in me I didn't see in myself, a white woman, and would, give me these stretch assignments, right? Would just really believe that I had the potential to do so much more than I was doing. And she was right there to provide that coaching and, that ear, when things got tough or I needed, like, I'm not sure, like, I think maybe, and I needed another. She was right there and began to speak my name in rooms. To this day, she is, stuck with me and she knows it. But we connected on like interesting things, right? One, because we're both Leos. Two, because we both love to read. And so she would like send books. I was out for a bit to have surgery. She like sent these books that she knew I would love. And I love them, right? She got to know me and my strengths. And she was very intentional about that. And that meant a lot. So mentors and sponsors look different. We need to ensure we are open to all who are willing to genuinely pour into us,
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah. It's so interesting when I hear people with similar stories of the mentors and sponsors who really just don't look like them. And you're like, how did we form such a bond? But it happened, right? I think some connections are just divine. They're supposed to happen.
Yeah. But it's also intentional. And I share like in my book, Visible Strengths, about, how to also secure relationships. I think people always feel like, oh, when I am, at this point and I need something, I need somebody really senior to do this and do that. But what are you doing in return? Right. And I talk, really genuinely, serving other people, whether or not you're going to get something out of them, serve them, care about them, celebrate them, do what they ask you to do and follow up and, like that. And engage with them regularly. Don't just engage when you need something. Engage regularly. Ask them how their family, their kids, how the barbecue went, how church went on Sunday, how
all of it.
So all of that is how like relationships are built. But I think unfortunately we've turned forming relationships or networking in quotes as like a transaction. But it's really about finding points of connection and continuing to nurture those points of connection until those relationships really, form such that people are just open to now kind of giving you whatever it is that you're looking for, and vice versa. But it's a relationship. And so it has to be mutually beneficial. And so just as you're walking through like your career pathway, it's not just about looking for those who will help you, but also how you can help them in return. So it's quite a massive like sort of change in pace. And that's, that's one thing I'm always checking for. Even before I figure out like how someone can help me, I'm always thinking how I can help them. There's this indebtedness thing. They're just indebted to you at this point. And so they just give you whatever. So that's kind of the pathway, I think, just having that openness and willingness to also kind of serve other people.
Absolutely. And I want to talk about the book in 2 seconds, but I want to go back to something you mentioned, career joy, right? I've never heard it phrased like that. And so as someone who coaches quite a bit in different areas, not just to students, but also to moms, and I talk about kind of creating your own balance, but that has to be aligned with what brings you joy, or else performance is just, you're not going to bring your best self to the environment, likely. So career joy, how do you identify what that is? How do you define it, right? And how do you ensure that what you pursue is aligned with what will bring you that level of joy? Because that's a heavy term, right? It's a heavy term. So talk to us a little bit more about that, Mary.
Gosh, it's a huge topic, but effectively is kind of what I spend time kind of researching and writing about. And when you think about career joy, you're probably thinking about being in a place where you're feeling satisfied and you're feeling fulfilled, and you are, that feeling when you wake up in the morning and you're not dreading the day. At night, you are tired, which is a natural human feeling, but you're not feeling like, God, I don't want to do that again.
Yeah.
Kind of practically how I think about like career joy. I'm not necessarily thinking about, I think sometimes when I say career joy, people think, oh my God, I'm standing on a table and doing a dance. That's not quite that. It could be, but it's spectrums, right? Like work is still work. It's called work for a reason. It's always going to feel like work. But am I done at the end of the day? And do I feel like, you know what, that was good. I can identify what I did. I can see how what I spent all these hours, I can see why it matters. I can see how I'm growing every single day. I can see how I've challenged myself and I'm ready to do this again. That's how I really think about practical, solid career joy, not some like kumbaya type. That's what I'm talking about. Now, like one thing, like I'll share some statistics. So Gallup, who are like their global analytics firm, and they're very, very focused on a lot of work in the strengths, the use of strengths within your career. And they quote some stats that are actually quite interesting, and they keep doing this research, and they keep kind of they double down on this pretty much every year. And they talk about the fact that, you know, people who are using, you know, focused on using their strengths in the workplace are 6 times more effective and engaged in their roles. They observe an 8 to 18% increase in performance, and are 3 times more likely to report having an excellent quality of life than those who do not use their strengths in the workplace. They found people who use their strengths in the workplace in general are more energized, rested, happy, confident. They're also less worried, stressed, angry, and anxious. And overall, they're more likely to achieve their goals. That for me sounds like career joy.
In a major way.
In a major way. And then for me, what they're basically saying is all of that stems from using, like, you know, using your strengths in the workplace, like using what comes most naturally to you. And so this is what was really attractive to me when I started thinking about this idea of finding joy. Like, finding joy starts with using strengths. Using strengths starts with discovering strengths. And so it kind of, you know, you go back one step and you get to the beginning. And so that was kind of really what I was, you know, spent a lot of my time on, and really started, you know, going on this journey for myself, and like seeing the fruits of it, you know, coming to pass. I'll say, look, finding career joy really is being in the place where you are using what's most natural to you to drive forward the agenda of your organization, to contribute value in a way that is super tangible. But also to do that in a way that you are growing yourself and you're also achieving your own goals, right? That is career joy. And so it's the pathway of, how do I discover my strengths? How do I craft my career around my strengths? How do I add value intentionally and innovatively every single day? And then how do I create more opportunities to keep on doing that? So that's really, for me, is like living out career joy and the like. And so, it's a journey, but it's beautiful when you get there.
It's beautiful. And like, you're saying this, and I'm like, all of this so resonates. Not just for me, but for so many, because, you know, when you're in that zone and you're actually using your strengths, or that kind of zone of genius. And
that's the word.
That's it. And I'm thinking about this book that you've poured it into for all of us. And the title, straight up, Visible Strengths, right? Like, I just want us to be here for a minute, because I'm thinking about the college student, traditional or non-traditional, right? You know, 18 to 30 something, 40 something years old.
Right.
I'm thinking about, I don't know, you know, the woman who's there, maybe thinking about a career pivot, or trying a new role, or going for a promotion, or who's just not sure of what to do next.
Right.
Right. I want us to speak to her for a minute about this book, right? About visible strengths. We've just talked a little bit about strengths and essentially Strengths Finder, the other book that comes to mind since you mentioned Gallup, which I love. But this book, I feel like I love so much more. And for a number of reasons. Again, there's a sisterhood here, but you've poured so much into it. So talk for a second about the book. Let's talk to the woman who's not sure of what to do next in her career, and she looks like us.
Whoosh. So talk to me, basically. It's kind of what that sounds like.
And talk to me. We're talking to each other.
No, this is like, hey, sis.
Yes.
Look, I think the first thing I always say is like, look, like, you're not alone, right? That's the first thing. And one of the reasons why I wrote this book, I'll start there before kind of delving into what you can expect to find in here. One of the reasons I wrote this book is really to address sort of key career struggles that young professionals, in particular professionals who are, in in underserved or slightly disenfranchised positions. So whether it's from a gender perspective, from an ethnic minority perspective, disabilities, whatever it is that, that maybe typically tend to lack guidance in their careers and don't have access to it, they tend to have sort of 4 categories of struggles. Is one, they lack clarity. So if you're feeling like you're lacking clarity right now, you are not alone. Like this idea, like, I don't know what path I want to take. I don't know if my ladder is on the right wall is not unusual. It's actually way, way, way more common than you might think. The second issue is confidence. This idea, like, I may know that my ladder is on the right wall, but I'm not really sure how to climb it. And so there's this confidence of how to articulate your strengths and how to present your work in a way that attracts new opportunities. Then there's the community is, do I have somebody who's pushing me up that ladder, or do I have somebody who's pulling me up the ladder? I'm feeling like I'm well supported when I'm somewhere in the middle, or at the start, in the middle, or somewhere at the top. Community, we tend to lack very sticky and sustainable relationships necessary for progression in the workplace. And 4, coaching. This, we tend to lack access to professional development programs that really prepare us for the workplace and continue to equip us with strategies to succeed. And so this is research. This is fact. So if you're experiencing any of those problems, the first thing I'll say to you is relax. You are not alone. This is a lot more common than you are. But then how do I help you close the gap is really what I talk about, this thing called the visible strengths philosophy, hence the title of the book, Visible Strengths. And it's really like, we all know there's no shortage of career advice. There's always like something to do about like, how do you find fulfillment and success in your career? There are tons and tons of ideas. But when you listen to all these ideas and you whittle it all down, it pretty much comes down to this sort of through line. And that through line is really that if you can cut through the echo chamber of all of that information, whatever industry you are, whatever sector, whatever stage, line, whatever, it all boils down to these 3 elements. Use my strengths, add value, communicate my results. That's pretty much it. And that's the essence of the book. And that's really the essence of our entire careers and everything that we're doing.
Yeah.
And this concept of career joy, right? So whether you're listening to this podcast right now and you are just starting out, or you are in the middle of your career, or you're even already senior, play those words back in your mind, and you would realize like you're going to find yourself somewhere in that circle. And the cover of the book is intentionally a circle, like for a reason. It's like you're always somewhere in there. And wherever you are, you can jump in at the relevant part of that circle and then continue. And so breaking sort of those concepts down is really this idea of, as we just talked about, career joy and strengths. And I start with like, you need to capitalize on your strengths. So you need to leverage your strengths in everything that you do. What are strengths? These are the things that come most naturally to you. These are the things that are your package of unique and, unique, either like born or learned talents that nurture every day and that come most naturally to you and are just so uniquely you. They're part of like your DNA. Where like whenever you think about the work that you should be doing, whenever you think about what you should be investing your time in and your day in and what you should be spending energy on, it's really the things that are built on top of your strengths. It should not be anything else. Many of us are constantly living out somebody else's life, unfortunately. But if you just took the moment and got the clarity and the bravery to just say, that's not me, it's for me, you will realize like you are now leading your own life. But a lot of the time, the lack of clarity is because shiny object syndrome, everybody else's life looks better than mine. I know that I'm good at caring for people, but I want to work in finance because finance people make 7 digits. But that's not your core. That's not your strength. So you're going to do that and be frustrated. But if you were building your career in care, you will eventually make the money and you will just be happier in the pathway. So it's about just trying to build on your strengths like that. That's sort of the first thing. And research actually shows that only like 4 out of 10 people at work really believe that they are in jobs where they get to do what they do best daily.
Wow.
So that's less than 50% of people.
4 out of 10.
4 out of 10 are actually in jobs where they feel like they're doing what they do best. And that's sad.
Very.
That's like 50% of people just like, basically call it 60% of people are working in jobs that are not suited for them. That's crazy.
So
much unhappiness.
And we talk about like the great resignation. We talk about this quiet quitting concept, and we wonder why. Like the data says we're not happy.
You're not happy. And that joy is doing what you do best every single day and, really positioning yourself there, right? So capitalize on your strengths. Number 2, contribute value. Wherever you are, you have to make sure you are solving problems. And that's the only way you're going to be in demand. How you figure out those problems, how you identify your stakeholders, how you, understand what is most valuable, that looks different in different environments. And I talk a lot about that in the book. But you have to really understand what is considered valuable to those that you serve, and you need to deliver those relevant results consistently and innovatively. No one can argue with value. Facts. Talk about, like, we see, this, there's an array of, lots of selling and offers and all these things out there. But the fact is, when someone shows you tangible results, you can't argue with that.
Yeah.
So you can charge whatever you want to charge. And this also applies to people in business. You can charge whatever you can charge when someone sees that, okay, if I put this money down, this is what it becomes. There is a value attribution here. So you are able to ask for whatever pay you want to ask for whatever promotion you want to ask for whatever job you want to ask for, if you can demonstrate your value add. Yeah. No one can argue with that. When you say, I went into this organization, I transformed it, I generated X amount of dollars, I saved X amount of dollars, you can't argue with that. That is numbers on a plate. That is value right there. So contribute value and, leverage your strengths to do that. And the final piece, which is the piece that we tend to miss a lot, is how do you communicate your results? How do you tell the story of the work that you're doing? Because that is the piece that restarts the opportunity circle. If you capitalize on your strength and add value and it stops there, you kind of limit how far you can go, because what you need to do is actually now start sharing and telling people, hey, this is what I did. This is the work that I'm doing. This is why I've done it. This is how I've done it. This is why it's the solution to your most pressing problem. Once that happens, people are like, I get it now. And it just creates more opportunities for you to capitalize on your strengths and contribute value and communicate even more results. Work doesn't speak, people do. So like that so wherever you are in your career phase right now, whether it is that if you're someone who's working a job that is, it has nothing to do with what you like to do best, now is the time to reposition. If you're someone who you feel like you're in the right place, but you are not clear of the things that you do daily and whether they matter, now is the time to start doing the assessment of what is valuable, how do I add value, who are my key stakeholders, how do I make sure like I am fully aligned and that the work that I'm doing every day is adding to something much bigger than my seat. There's someone who is doing that, but you feel like you're doing all of this work and getting no recognition. It's time for you to like drop the paper and the pad and start talking. Pick up the loudspeaker and start saying, hey, this is what I'm doing. And it's not self-promotion. It's value promotion. It's not about me. And this is the reason why a lot of people don't do it. It's really about, look at the work that I've done. And this is why you should care about that. So it's not about you talking is about signposting your work. It's not about signposting to you. When you can switch your mind into that phase, you realize like talking about your work and sharing about your work is not going to make you arrogant. It's not going to make you, look like whatever it is that we always feel nervous about doing. But it's really about signposting to people, because what you have done can help other people and they should know about it. So wherever you are in that circle, jump in and, keep going, because you are probably somewhere there. And if you have it all figured out, great, share and tell people how you've done it. Share with others, pull people along. It's now your responsibility to not just keep that information to yourself, but now actually like share with others and like help people kind of get onto the circle as well. So so that's like, in essence, the message. A lot, but it's a message, and you can find yourself sort of somewhere in these pages.
Wow, and wow. Before we hit record, I told you I love this book for so many reasons. Mary, okay, so before I go any further, I want to share, just kind of weave this in. If you're listening to this now and you're like, I need Mary's book, because Mary and Christina said I need a book, and so you have to have the book. Make sure you're subscribed to my email list and send me an email. The first, 3 people to do it will get a copy of Mary's book. So hold me to that. And the link to subscribe is in the show notes. Make sure you get your hands on this book. And I mean it genuinely. I am not one for fluff, not one for sugarcoating things like this. This is it. This is so much of what we need in this community, right? No gatekeeping of how to progress in our careers, right? There's no room for that. So, all right, link in show notes to subscribe. First 3 people who send me an email and say, make sure I get my hands on Visible Strengths, Christina, will get the book. I call this show The Keys to the Office, because I think about how we, and you touched on this earlier, how so many of us kind of don't know the options that exist. We don't have the mentors or know how to access the mentors. We don't have that guidance. A lot of us are first generation college students. I was one. So it's the keys to the office, because as professionals, we have, I think, we have the ability to impact generational wealth.
Yeah.
And we are responsible for doing that and sharing our paths and sharing our messages, and lifting as we climb. So talk to me, if you had to sum it up, right? A major key to the office, right? What's one thing, in addition to getting your book, that an individual can do today or can start working on or planning for, right, to position them for success? And you've said so much. Tell me one major thing they can start working on now.
Self-awareness.
Ooh.
Point blank, period.
Mic drop, kick off the stage. Keep going, Mary. Self-awareness. Talk to us more about that.
Just know yourself, and to thyself be true. That's it. Like, everything is self-awareness is the bedrock of self-mastery. Self-mastery is just what makes you tick, basically. Yeah. So if you've heard nothing else in all of this right now, make sure you have a clear idea of who you are fundamentally and how you want to use that person and that awareness to show up every day. And not show up at work, show up at your home, show up with your friend groups, your communities, your whatever it is, your business. Just know who you are. We are all who we are, but I don't think we spend enough time with ourselves. Many of us know our friends more than we know ourselves. Because we don't sit with ourselves. We don't listen to our own thoughts. In fact, we actually try, and I'm guilty of this, like we try to drown our thoughts out, just with, Real Housewives and whatever. Listen, I don't even want to think about what's going on in my head right now, but actually, if we sat with ourselves, we spent more time in introspection, we we ask the so what questions every day. Something is happening, is giving me information, and so what? How does this impact me? How is this making me feel? We'll make more decisions for ourselves. And I think we will make just less mistakes along the way. So yeah, my one thing is self-awareness, sit with yourself, spend time on just spend time unpacking. If it's therapy you need, do it.
Yeah.
Spend time unpacking who you are and why you do the things you do and what makes you show up the way you show up. That's transformational. And it's just this number one. If you can get that right, that's the big career joy.
And own it, right? Like become aware and then own who you are.
I love that addition. I'm going to take that from you. Oh God.
Take it.
An ownership. I'm going to take it from
you. And own it. Be comfortable with.
But be very uncomfortable with who you are.
Mm-hmm.
It's so possible, especially like if you grow up in an environment where there are all these expectations.
Mm-hmm.
All these like labels and all these things. So you're like, I know who I am, but who I am is not going to be accepted in these streets. So, but you need to be that person that says, no, this is who I am. And I'm going to honor that person every day with my choices, with my words, with my actions. I'm going to honor who I am and do it. Like that is the beginning of career joy.
Yes. Mary Adeyemi, I can't thank you enough for carving out time to share so much. Like I do this podcast for our communities, and oftentimes I get so much from it. And this is one of those episodes that I feel and I'm not normally one to struggle for words, but this feels so good to talk to someone else who's doing the work. And you just poured into me in a way that, one day I'll tell you all the ways it has impacted my life. But this conversation has meant a lot to me. It has meant a lot, I know, to the Keys family. And so I thank you. I thank you for all you're doing.
Thank you so much for having me. It's meant a lot to me too. So awesome. I'm really happy to be here and to share and to hear how it's all going to impact you and hear stories, more career joy stories, guys. That's what I want to hear. More career joy stories. You can do it.
How can we find you? How can we support you? How can we get support from you? And then for the, those who don't get the book, right? For the 3 select people who will get the book from me, how can they get the book?
I'm going to get the book. Okay. How can you find me? I am in all places social, in particular on Instagram and on LinkedIn. Just search my name, Mary Mosope Adeyemi. I know Christina's going to put it in the show notes. Mm-hmm. And you can also connect with my company, viSHEbility Limited, also viSHEbility on LinkedIn and viSHEbility on Instagram. And website is viSHEbility.com. And you can always contact me and straight. It's always me on the other side. There's no chat bot. There's no whatever. It's always me. So I'm always going to be the one coming back by email. Where you can find the book, easiest place is Amazon.com. That's the easiest place to get a copy, and you can get it in digital or print format. If you're looking to get more than one copy at a time, say for an engagement or something bigger, then please send me an email at mma@viSHEbility.com. And then we can kind of organize that for you and maybe get it signed or even hook you up with a speaking engagement or something like that. That could work. So so depending on what you want to do, you can always find us in so many places. But
yes, thank you, Mary. I appreciate you, and just know you are stuck with me now.
Me, like,
we are stuck in a good way because there's more work to be done, and I know we're both committed to doing it. So thank you, and I will talk to you soon.
Thank you so much. Speak soon.
All right.
If you're hearing this message, you have listened to the entire episode, and for that, we thank you from the bottom of our hearts. We hope you enjoyed it, and if you did, please don't forget to subscribe. Leave us a review and check out our website at www.thekeystotheoffice.com. We look forward to connecting with you in a future episode. Until then, go be amazing.